Item on the agenda is Brian Wood, the Assistant City Manager, to talk about tax growth within Auburn. Mr. Wood?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, City Manager. Can everybody hear me?
Right.
So one of the things that has been, I think, percolating, definitely something that Council has directed us to really dig into our, in addition to growth, one of the ways that we can really spur growth is through looking at both tax incentives and permitting incentives. And I think we've seen that in the passage of the Delegated Review Authority that passed a couple of months ago, and how we're going to expedite that. And part of that is, as well as looking at kind of three different buckets of opportunities that we have before us to incentivize. Thanks. To incentivize current residents that are renting to buy here in Auburn, to incentivize seniors that are currently residing here and own. How do we help them age in place and or downsize here in Auburn? And then how do we attract new residents both to Maine and more specifically to Auburn? And so one of the things in conversations, I think, with most of you, either individually, collectively, as well as the mayor, I've heard from everybody, is that those are kind of three areas that are really ripe for us to take a look at and be active in. And so putting together this kind of package for us to think about and begin moving in that general direction. So one area that I think the mayor mentioned or discussed previously is the veterans incentives. And so after taking a look at a number of different jurisdictions, a number of different opportunities that other municipalities and states have afforded, one of the things that we realized is Maine is pretty restrictive in what we're able to do with property taxes outside of seniors. And so one of the things that we do know we have extensive control over is permitting, what those fees look like, how we assess them, and who's able to benefit from those fees. And so one of the ways that we have thought about incentivizing veterans, especially those that are recently coming home, encouraging them to come to Auburn, especially since Maine has, I believe, Mr. Mayor, 10% of Mainers are veterans and or service members.
In Auburn, it's roughly 8 to 10%, which is the second highest in the state. So I think the state average is probably a little bit less than that, but.
Perfect, thank you. And so how do we encourage them to come home once they are leaving service? And one of the things that we've looked at is for veterans that are renovating a single family home that will be used as their primary residence, waiving those permit fees. Another opportunity is for those that are, those veterans that are returning and participating or renovating a multi-unit up to 4 units, waiving those permit fees as well. As we know, there's tremendous job growth in Auburn, and that's an area that we've been focused on for a number of years. But part 2 to that is making sure that we have the workforce that's skilled, able, and ready to come here and fill those jobs. And so that is an area where we feel that we can act unilaterally and fairly quickly to create those incentives. And just for reference, Auburn over the past 5 years has averaged approximately 20 new homes built per year. So if you want to extrapolate the number of veterans that would benefit from that, theoretically it would be anywhere from 1 to 2 veterans, but ideally through this program we'd be able to dramatically increase that number, as well as increase the number of homes that are being built here in Auburn. The second bucket or area that we're looking at are senior tax options. So this is something that has been widely discussed, is widely looked at all across the United States. I don't think there's a municipality or a state in the country that doesn't have some type of incentive program for seniors, whether that's a tax deferment program, whether that's a tax relief program, obviously benefiting from homesteads. And so one of the things that Auburn has a unique opportunity to kind of be a pioneer in is mixing two different programs that are pretty common. One of them, and I think we can see that most municipalities here in Maine have some type of tax relief program, looking at the adjusted gross income of seniors, anywhere from $50,000 to $40,000 as the adjusted gross, receiving a portion of those property taxes back in some type of tax credit. It can range anywhere from Scarborough, which is up to or not to exceed $750. And you have Cape Elizabeth, Wyndham is $500. One of the things that I think would be interesting, and one of the things that we've explored, is creating some type of hybrid model where you have a tax deferral program mixed with a tax freeze. And so what that would look like is a certain percentage of a property tax, a senior's property tax would be frozen based off of when they turn 65 or when they apply to the program. Have that percentage, we'll walk through it. So a percentage of the proposed property tax would be deferred, and that would obviously be a benefit to the seniors. And upon sale of that property, that money would be recouped at an interest rate associated with it as well. And so if we wanted to look at just kind of a simple journey map, property assessed at $200,000 based on our mill rate would generate $4,700 in property tax. If we were to freeze or defer approximately 25% of that property tax, and this is just a hypothetical journey map, that would be approximately $1,187. Over, let's say, a 10-year period, this senior moves, you would have accrued $11,870 that would be then paid to the city upon sale of that property, plus 5% compound interest, totaling $19,552. One of the things that has been viewed nationally, especially when looking at seniors that have purchased their property over a traditional 30-year mortgage, is that there's a deferred desire to pay taxes and rather pay the penalty to the city because the cost of borrowing money to pay those taxes tends to be higher than the interest rate that the city charges. And so you'll see a deferment of property taxes, whether we incentivize that or not. One of the things we're working on is understanding and collecting data around this so that we are able to make a truly informed decision around what the implications of that would be. I think the tax frozen piece ensures that there's not a precipitous drop in revenue at the outset of this program. So that is one option that is available. And then I think the other piece that we're looking at to incentivize residents that are currently here that are renters, but also individuals that are looking for a place to call home, is again centered around permitting and waiving permit fees for individuals that are first-time home buyers, which is going to be based on the standard of 3 years, not having owned a principal property in Maine, which is pretty common amongst most jurisdictions. We would, if they are purchasing a home that was purchased a home from a senior that was participating in a tax-deferred program, we would waive the permitting fees for any modernizations for 12 to 18 months. So what that does is incentivize young families and those that are interested in purchasing a home to purchase some of these homes that have been in families and kept by seniors for 10, 20, sometimes 30 years, and give them the ability and flexibility to rehab those homes and continue that market. So those are a few of the options that we're looking at when it comes to growth and tax incentives, and just kind of wanted to talk to council to make sure that these are something that would be interesting to have some of those conversations and see what path and direction you'd like us to take.
Does anybody have any questions? Councilor Lasagna?
This is exactly the kind of thinking that we need to do around housing in this community. So thank you for this. And I just have a couple of questions. Would there be an income threshold for veterans?
For the veterans, we were originally not thinking an income threshold, but that's certainly something that we could explore. But as of now, no.
As I'll explain a little bit on that, and we talked about the income threshold. The problem with veterans is that pretty much every veteran is below federal poverty when they're in the service poverty level with regards to income. Getting out, their income is pretty zero. Having income thresholds is kind of a disincentive, if you would, to it, because primarily who you're attracting, they're starting off. Okay, they're starting out. And it's not that the majority of people that get out of the military, and Steve, jump in here too, because you do this for work in your day job, but the majority of them do not have pensions. They're getting out after a 3, 4, 6, 8-year hitch, and then they're coming back into the workforce. So they're starting from zero. So that's a little bit hard. But then again, you do have your retirees who are retiring as an officer. They want to move back to Auburn, and their retirement's worth $120,000 a year. Still someone we want to attract in. So, and that person could be 42. So, I mean, it's very interesting to look. But
Are you looking for maximum or minimum income thresholds?
Maximum threshold that you would qualify this for. So that's helpful, but I was thinking of officers and people like that, because this is, and then how are these cohorts chosen? You know, that you did New Auburn residents, veterans, and seniors. I mean, I don't know that there are others. I mean, single parents, or just out of curiosity.
Sorry. Yeah, sure. Those buckets were identified in a number of different areas. Obviously, veterans provide a skilled workforce for Auburn, especially as we're looking to continue to attract and fill the current positions that are available and new positions as additional economic growth develops. Seniors obviously are a key component to any community, and how do we make sure that they're able to age in place since they've contributed so much, but also how do we retain them? And I think that's a piece that I glossed over, but was articulated in, you know, how do we grow? One of the ways that we grow is through retention. And I think as part of our economic development strategy, we talked about not just bringing in new businesses, but how do we grow the businesses that we currently have? And that model also applies to our residents. How do we make sure we keep the residents that we currently have? And then for new homeowners, focusing on those that are coming and looking for a place to call home permanently. How do we incentivize them? And how do we continue to incentivize new growth, whether that's development of new homes or getting homes that have previously fallen off the tax rolls or has significant upside in terms of tax revenue. If they're renovated, how do we get those back into the market and at their highest and best value? And so those are kind of the three buckets, all in alignment with the strategic plan and all in alignment with the comp plan.
And one last question, if I may, just quickly. Why new to Maine? Aren't we also trying, I mean, don't we also want to get people who live in southern Maine or live in other places in Maine to move to Auburn?
I'll answer that one. Yes, but you don't want to be in a position where you're cannibalizing in an already sinking ship. In other words, it's just sort of like moving the deck chairs around in the Titanic. If we're pulling just from Maine, we know Maine has a problem. We're the oldest state in the country, and if we can do our part to help solve that and to get the number of people moving into Maine to fix our demographic problem, this could actually be an incentive or an inspiration, kind of a little bit of leadership for other municipalities in Maine to do the same thing. So we don't want to just reshuffle, we want to add net. Everything here is interesting, is additive. So incentivizing veterans, regardless of income, to build a home. So you get that colonel who retires making $100,000, $120 a year in retirement. That might be the big enough motivation for that colonel to go ahead and build a new home in Auburn, adding to the base, versus buying an existing. And that's what we want to do. Same thing with seniors. We want to keep them in their homes, but be able to allow others to build homes as well. Because at the end of the day, the biggest problem we have here is inventory. So we have to figure out ways to add or be additive towards our inventory. Focusing folks from away. God forbid we get anyone from Washington, D.C. that is even interested in Auburn. If they're exiting the D.C. marketplace, chances are they have a plethora of cash and equity that they're cashing out at, and they're going to come here, and we want to incentivize them to build or to rehab and spend some of that equity. And that's just the kind of the flow of the economics. And we're allowed only 2 people from Washington, D.C., for the record, per fiscal year. So it's all about additive, and how do you construe that to be additive to our population, additive to our demographic, and additive to the stock.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Can we go back a slide to the new Maine incentive?
New to Auburn?
New to Auburn resident incentives. I just want to clarify, can you hear me all right? I just want to clarify that the incentive of waiving the city permitting fees for 12 to 18 months is only if a first-time home buyer purchases a home from a resident participating in the senior housing tax referral program. So how would the first-time home buyer who has a couple of homes to choose from, it's not really an incentive unless they know that the person that they're purchasing from has this specific benefit. So is it public, or how would they find out, and how are we incentivizing something that they might or might not be aware of?
Certainly. So it's not necessarily public in the sense that it's something that we're advertising on, the front page of our website, but I think it is something that would be or could be available to the real estate agents or listing agents in the area to understand, or even for our purposes, keeping an inventory that is accessible of individuals that are interested in potentially selling their home. And so I think one of the ways that we can think about that is looking at the market as it is right now for a senior. Let's say I purchased my home 30 years ago for $100,000. As of 5 years ago, it was worth 130 or 40, and I was participating in this program, and now it's worth 210, 220. The incentive for me to now transition out and perhaps downsize is significantly greater than it was 2 years ago when the market wasn't quite as hot as it is right now. And so, but to your point, making sure that individuals know that this is an additional group of individual or of homes that you can look at that have this added benefit to them is definitely something that we would want to market, obviously with the agreement of the homeowner.
A couple things, just a reminder, especially people watching from home. We are modifying our audio set, so we're going to constantly be reminding each other if we're too close to or too far away or not directional. So if we all just be a little bit cognizant of that while we're speaking and interrupt if one of us is not being heard. Okay, so, but on that, you're good with your question? Okay, so one thing about that is disclosure. On a tax deferment program, were you thinking about this would have to be in the form of, I don't want to say the word lien, but some sort of disclosure upon closing of the transfer of the property that amount would be due?
Yes, and what we found is most municipalities that do have a tax deferment, it does correspond with a lien associated with that program. One of the things, speaking with our team, is really going to be an educational component for everybody, and I think we've seen one of the reasons we've had challenges getting some of our CDBG funding out the door to support seniors with modifications like roof repairs and so forth is because there can sometimes be a lien component associated with that. And so educating residents on what that means and the implications, I think, is a really important component, because I think anybody here, after you've spent decades paying off a house, to have somebody tell you they're going to put a lien on it is a scary thought. And so that's definitely, part and parcel of what goes along with, I think any of these programs is a robust educational piece in getting the word out there and helping people benefit from these programs.
Councilor Milks?
I mean, I think the biggest issue when I see all of these slides that are put up is that it's the mill rate's the 600-pound gorilla in the room. And when you get somebody coming from, I'm working with someone right now, and you look at building a $500,000 house in Auburn versus one town over, 20 minutes away, it's half the taxes.
Yeah, and I mean, the only way, and we did this data analytics, and Brian, jump in here, please, too, but just remind everybody that the more, at this point, the more population / new residences market rate that we build in Auburn up to 2,000 would translate into approximately 20% reduction in individual property tax. So we're past that point now of diminishing returns of fixed costs, and we can beat that down. But getting people to do that and absorbing that large mill rate up front in order to get that momentum going, I think is the biggest challenge we'll have. Brian?
And absolutely, and you're absolutely right. And one of the things I think that the staff, really took a good, long, hard look at is what are our options available in terms of property tax incentives specifically. I know one of the things out of the gate that we were exploring is for first-time home builders, how do we do things that are going to be operationally revenue neutral? And so there was thought about, a tax deferment or tax relief program for new homes for the first year after it was purchased. But unfortunately, Maine state law really regulates how municipalities are able to defer and or suspend property taxes in a way that some other states don't regulate. And so I think, and I will send out to everyone kind of an assessment done by Texas Christian University of all 50 states and what the impact of various senior programs has had. And I think one of the things you'll see is really just the difference in state requirements and latitude that's afforded to different states. You think you could see something very dramatically different in the state of New York. So,
To me, if you want to make something easy to understand and an incentive, and in this, you may be telling me we can't do it, is say, if you come and move in, build a house in Auburn, you got a 50% reduction in your property tax for the first 5 years. Boom. Anybody that moves to Auburn.
But that really hurts us because the city doesn't get that money.
I mean, then you're going to get 100% of zero.
From a mathematical standpoint, when you're talking additive, only at the point, the real point where Auburn's at right now, it's delayed gratification, so it is additive. You'll get 50% of, something versus 100% of zero. But unfortunately, state law doesn't allow us to do that type of program. So we got to get creative on this. And if we could, from a policy standpoint, we've been thinking about this. We know the data is clear. Growth equals decrease in mill rate, which is a direct reflection upon our individual taxes that everybody pays. That's what we need. And with more growth in residential will come even further growth in industrial, retail, downtown. That's the pattern. It's all about incentivizing folks to come here. And as we're going to learn in a few minutes here during the next workshop, what is our CIP and budget situation going to be looking like for the next fiscal year? So it's going to be a lot of different things, or at least 3 different things to make this work. Do we have any questions? Do we all have consensus here about moving forward and exploring these 3 programs in greater detail, i.e. literally written up? Because like we've done before, we don't want to, bog staff down unless it's a priority.
Yeah, so that's a great segue, Mr. Mayor. I think what we need to do next is, you know, I feel Jill's eyes burning into me as we're having this topic and having this discussion as our finance director. So what we need to know is, how much further do we want to get into these to really dig out what the true cost and the impacts will be for these? Some of them we can basically just ballpark. I think I had stepped out earlier, but I think what was said was, you know, of 5,000 properties that we have in Auburn, close to 550 of those are receiving a veteran incentive. So now if you take those percentages, you can kind of get a sense of what does our veteran population currently look like in Auburn. We already have, because they're already enrolled in a tax incentive program, that means of the $73,000 of taxes that are sheltered of those 550 some odd veterans that are living in Auburn, we're receiving only about 20,000 of that back from the state. That means $50,000 of that we do not receive back. That's part of participating in that program. That's been pretty consistent, Jill, since it started probably. So, so we know we're not going to see anything there. Then we also have the homestead exemption. So we are running those numbers as well. These would be built up on top of those current homestead exemptions. The more that we talk about homestead exemptions, if you take a look at, we'll use the mayor for an example, was not aware you could apply for that homestead exemption. Others were like that. So we have others that have now seen that. They have started to apply for those homestead exemptions. We still don't know all the true cost impacts to that increase. We're getting that. Jill's been getting those numbers, but we're seeing an increase just this year alone. So as we get into this, we need to really analyze what are those true impacts, especially when we take a look at the senior program. That's probably the one that could potentially have the largest immediate impact. How long do you have to go before those homes then get sold, and then you have that money coming in based on those sales of those homes, which would then start offsetting the program? So you have to take that initiative, and maybe that means that you're going to cap. And you're going to say, okay, we're going to do a certain amount as we roll this program out. So there's some different things that we can do, but we need to know how much time do we want to spend on it. Currently, staff has looked at state statutes, started taking a look at what's allowed, what's not allowed, because there is certain language regarding doing any type of tax incentive programs, like when I think somebody had said, why aren't we just opening it up? Because there are some limitations on groups that you can provide tax incentives for. And so we're on that track currently. What we need to know is, if this is something you're really interested in, we're going to need to then talk about what does that analysis look like, so we can come back with some really, as close as we can, hard numbers for you.
And if I could just add to that, and maybe give a nice compromise here to give some direction, at least for time's sake, because we are up against a fairly definitive deadline here with regards to the city, which is the spring construction season, if we're going to start seeing any type of tax increase in valuation for fiscal year 22. It might be from a priority of work to listen to what the city manager said, and just from what Brian pointed out, to do the analysis based upon priority of simplicity versus, not to be confused with importance, okay? The veteran portion, we've got hard numbers. We know that we're getting around 20 new houses a year being built in Auburn. 2 of those are being built by veterans. It's around 6,000 to 7,000 and permitting waived, but it's additive for the most part. We know what that can do long-term as these veterans qualify. Not all veterans, by the way, qualify for these state incentives. Very, very clear. The vast majority of veterans do not qualify for the state incentives with regards to property tax relief, okay? So if we did that, and then we did new Mainers, very easy. This is about permitting. The new Auburn portion is actually extremely simplistic, and it is completely additive. It's about the, well, at least on the multi-family portion, I think it was a different slide. The different slide, waiving permitting for anybody building, or excuse me, rehabbing a multi-family up to 4 units, which is non-commercial. That is something for new Maine residents that can be, you know, easily done from a financial modeling standpoint, or fiscal note, if you would. If the council agrees on looking at the lowest hanging fruit of the ease of simplicity, working to the more complicated.
Can you back away from the thing?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were telling me to leave. I'll get used to it. So if the council's in agreement, working from the simplistic to the more complicated, that senior portion is critical, but that's going to take a lot of work. Thoughts?
So you're saying the two, looking at the two initially, the new
Or
Auburn
three, looking,
residents and
prioritizing based
and the
upon
senior-
time
I
needed.
mean, and the
step time.
veterans. I would say if you think and you, understanding your staff capacity, that looking at the two of those, knowing that you have a lot of the information, the data you need, I would say go ahead. And then the seniors, it sounds like that's going to be a lot more work.
That's correct, yeah.
Can I clarify the new Mainer slide? Can you go back to that? That was people new to Maine and who are buying into senior housing tax deferred programs? That's an and statement?
Yes.
So that one we wouldn't see this happening for years from now, only after we have our senior tax deferral program in place and,
Yes, that
Okay.
is the way this particular thought is
Right.
structured. If we wanted to go in a different direction, or if there were advice from council to explore this with different components or different programs, then we could do that.
Counselor Boss?
Yeah, I would advocate for opening up this incentive to any first-time home buyer, if that's allowed in state statute.
Could you come closer?
Open this up to any first-time home buyer if it's allowed by state statute, because this to me is not an incentive. First of all, if you're a first-time home buyer, more likely than not, you're young, which means that you barely have the revenue to buy a house anyhow, which means that you're not going to be putting in any work that would require a city permit early on. So the likelihood that you're going to, A, link up with buying a home from a senior who's part of the other benefit and utilizing this incentive of no permitting fees is really minimal. So I personally, as a young person recently buying a home, I don't see this as an incentive that would bring me to Auburn. So I think if you can open it up, like I said, I don't know what's allowed in state statute, but open it up to any first-time home buyer might be more incentivizing.
So if you do that, just playing devil's advocate, I don't disagree by any means, but that would take away one of the goals of being additive to the Maine population.
It would be.
It would diminish the results of that effort. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. If you open up to anybody versus having it
Oh,
opened
no,
up to
sorry.
people coming from Maine.
Any first-time home buyer.
Right, if you did, yeah, so it would not be just people relocating to Maine.
No, both, yes and. So people who are new to Auburn, any first-time home buyer purchasing any home, not just a home from a resident participating in the senior housing tax deferral program. Because these are linked, right?
Yep.
So it's like you have to be a first-time home buyer from away who's also purchasing a home from a senior participating in the tax deferral program. I'm suggesting keeping it to new Auburn residents and first-time home buyers, but for any home in Auburn. But I don't know what state statute allows. That might be a barrier.
yeah.
Counselor Gary, do you have something to Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought CDBG already had some sort of program for first-time home buyers. They get a little bit of pocket money for when they buy a house and move in.
So CDBG does have a couple of different programs for low to moderate income first-time home buyers that are traditionally paired with a number of other programs, whether that be through through other HUD programs or whether it be through Auburn Housing. But I think what we found is just greater limitations in terms of who's eligible and what types of properties are eligible for them as well, that have created scenarios where that programs haven't been as beneficial, I think, as we would have liked. So I think that's kind of where we're seeing a little bit of a challenge.
So, just Counselor McLeod, then I got a question to follow up with that.
So I like where this is going, but I agree with Councilor Boss that I think we should open it up to new home buyers to bring people here, and whether that means we have a time limit on it, on how long we are going to have this program for, either, or a number of people who can apply for it, so that way there is a scarcity at the end. And then it turns into something similar to this, where we are able to move our housing stock around. But I mean, this one, as written, is 20 years from now, probably. Whereas if we want to get people here today, we get first-time home buyers and kind of open that up and be, revolutionary in the state to get people here.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd open it up now, but still the reality is, if a senior has to enter into the program, they're going to enter it into it for a period of time.
Right, until they want to sell their home.
So, but
Which is great.
that, yeah, for a second, I mean, the new, I think there's some more, Counselor Boss, I was trying to clarify because I couldn't hear you very well. I think there's a lot of if we want to open this up to first-time home buyers, and I think Glenn and Jay and Eric probably add some color to this as well, that first-time home buyers and your active retiree market are competing for the same stock. And from what I've heard anecdotally, that's why I'd love to, if you have anything to add, please do. Your active retiree is downsizing, so the amount of equity that you have to put down on that house, going head-to-head on a bid with a lack of inventory what we have now, the first-time home buyers are being carved out of the equation. So, because they just can't compete. If I had an offer with someone with 30% cash down versus 5 or 10, yeah, I'm going 30.
Just, like, why are we deciding who we want and not want to move to Auburn? If somebody doesn't live here and they move to Auburn, isn't that what we're trying to incent? The money is green, whether they got kids, it counts the same. Why aren't we incenting, like, how much is this?
Sure. So, and I think some of the standards that we used when we're looking at first-time home buyer, the technical definition that is pretty universally accepted is an individual that hasn't owned a house in that particular state for 3
Right.
or more consecutive
But I
years.
mean, as far as the incentive.
Yes.
The incentive is the money. That's what it means. I'm either gonna buy here for X number of dollars, or I'm gonna buy here for X number of dollars.
Right.
How much are these incentives? What's the dollar amount?
So that's what we're working through right now. So one of the things that we're doing in terms of aggregating information, so about 5 or 6 years ago, as the Homestead program was really being pushed out even to a greater extent, what they were able to capture on the form was the age of the individual and the length of time that they had been in that home. And so while it's great that we capture that information, our ability to extract it from the current database that we have it in is a very manual process.
No, I'm sorry, I don't mean, I'm not asking specifically about
Oh,
this
okay,
particular,
sorry.
I'm saying in general, if we're gonna incentivize people to move here,
Right.
we have to say, I'm thinking of moving to Auburn. Okay, it's worth 10 grand.
Right, I got you.
Well,
And therefore, we can put you into all these different programs, but it adds up to about 10 grand over 5 years.
you know, at the end of the day, the reality is we don't have a problem with people wanting to live here. Everybody wants it, not everybody, but the demand is so high right now that that's not really our issue. I mean, issue trying to get new home buyers into a home is an issue, but it's all solved by inventory. A lot of this is solved by more inventory.
Well, this particular type incentive would also help our infill and our downtown and the rehab of our housing stock. Because this would get somebody who, to what you're saying, they have $500,000, where are they gonna spend it? If Auburn's gonna, come up with some sort of waiving the fees to go renovate my new home, to allow me to renovate it, all of a sudden, I don't have to pay the renovation fees to the city. So that brings the head-to-head.
And that's more focused.
Draw an
and
area
predictable.
downtown, if you buy one of these houses, you can,
Right.
you fit.
As
More
a new
predictable,
homeowner, and you're gonna
reaches the
live there,
goal.
then this is the type of, we'll waive the permitting, because you're gonna renovate our housing stock and,
But my point, again, when I'm looking at buying a house, what is it worth to me?
Can we ask Eric how much our average
So
house
if,
costs?
and I'm not asking for that answer
$250,000.
today, if we could come up with
$215,000
that.
as of last week.
I don't need that, I'm not looking for that, but that's what, for me to evaluate this is,
13 to 3.
what's it worth?
Right, you're talking about what is the valuation package overall?
Right, what is the incentive we're going to offer to move people here? Like, how much does it add up to be? This number of dollars, that's what I'm looking for.
I think we have enough to move forward with some of the low-hanging fruit. We can bring that back. I think that balance you have to do, Councilor Milks, with what you're referring to as, the program has to be an incentive that also meets a need that we have as a city. Because it's the same thing as, you look at some of these cable companies, right? So I get frustrated when I'm a cable company and I'm paying my monthly fee, but if I'm a new time cable company, a new customer rather, I get a cable monthly fee that's 50% less of what I might be paying as someone who's been a cable payer for 20 years. And so the incentive has to say, well, what is it going to bring back to the city? And if we can work on infill, work on rehab, work on some of that we're looking for in the downtown area, certain areas that we really want to bring housing into, then that's key for us. But across the board, saying of those 20 homes, across the board, we're going to reduce your taxes by 25% for the first 3 years, that's not an incentive for us, because we have the market that wants those, and they're coming in anyway. We don't need to do that, because then we're losing about $25,000 on those 20 homes if the average cost is around $4,500 for taxes per year, if we're sheltering 25%. That doesn't work for us. So it has to be able to an incentive that benefits us.
Just need more. But bottom line is, we need to encourage, and this is some good takeaways from all everybody's comments was, how is it additive? How are we getting more homes to be built? And to the point, the mill rate is a problem, but it's not hindering our sales of homes right now. Because when you look at the overall escrow amount, it's still inclusive of property taxes, it's still significantly cheaper than Cumberland County, let's say. So even when taxes are rolled in, because of the home values, though they're climbing, they're still significantly less than York and Cumberland. So I think it's a good conversation. We have to keep having these conversations. I say at this point, we'll let staff kind of work it a little bit more. And the goals are clear. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, downtown blight reduction, first-time home buyers, additive construction, additive to stock, and protecting our seniors long-term so they can retire in place. Am I missing anything?
So does the city, Mr. Manager, do you have a clear,
I'm good.
okay.
What I'm trying to do, but thanks for doing that for me. Anything else? Good? Clear? Okay. We're going to move on. Time-wise, Phil, we have 2 more workshop items. I don't want to necessarily start something that we
So,
can't finish.
I think if you could, I'd like to do ordinance, because that's just talking about the process.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
Ordinance review?
Do that now?
Yeah. And then we could always do budget goals and CIP after the meeting, because it's going to be a pretty quick meeting, I
Very good.
believe.
Okay.
So-
So we're going to move towards, we're going to go towards we're going to skip the agenda a little bit. We're going to talk about,
Nope, right in order.
well, we're going to right there. Ordinance review process, and we're going to have the city manager presenting.
So I'll be really quick. We have started the ordinance review at department levels. Most of the ordinances do tie in with just about every department within the city. Relies on the ordinances and how they're written, how they go about meeting the day in, day out needs. Part of the charter review is you review the charter every 15 years, and ordinance is the way that it's worded in the charter. So that process is what we need to go through. What I'd like to do is not necessarily take this section by section, because we don't have the time, honestly. But I would like to talk about articles. And we can look at an article when we bring this back before the council at another session. We'll look at several articles. What we'll have for you before the meeting is a form that looks like this. This form basically has the current language, and then it has what the proposed language will be for that ordinance, and the reason for changing it. So you'll be able to have this in advance, take a look at it. An example on this one here is a real simple one. It's regarding the time and place of regular meetings. It has the old ordinance. What we're proposing for the new ordinance would be that instead of stating that the meeting shall be held the following Monday, if there's a holiday, what we're proposing is that it's going to be held the following day on Tuesday. That's typically what we've been doing for the last year anyway. It's what it used to be, and then we moved it to the Monday afterwards, which made it very difficult to turn around agendas. So that would be the sheet, and you'd get the reason why on the bottom, and you'll be able to take a look at it. So the first packet that we hand you will have several of these that we've gone through and just did some housekeeping, really, of the language. What's our current practice, or what is staff recommending a new practice might be, based off from our involvement, what we've been doing as it pertains to whether it's a council meetings, roles and authority, and then really by departments. The other piece regarding our ordinance is, and I'm not sure why, but there's only maybe 2 departments that are really listed by ordinance. Some, it's by function, and so you'll have some of the other departments listed in because of function. But if you were to look at departments, when it would outline all your departments, finance department is the first one, or public works is, I believe, and then finance. And then that's it. There's no other departments listed. So I think having some of that language in for those departments, what's their primary responsibility, focus, I think that'll be important to include in the ordinance moving forward. So we'll be adding some of that language in. And then you have housekeeping items like all of our parking signs, no parking signs on the streets are listed in the ordinance. I don't know when it was done last, honestly. So the southerly end of Hampshire Street from one side street to the next side street lists whether or not that's parking available or not parking. All that had to be updated. It's all updated. It's ready for your review. But that's what staff has been working on and going through. So we have a lot of those ordinances that'll be coming before you, but not page by page. So if you're interested in going through each section, we can do that. But I'd rather you know the next meeting, we're going to review articles such and such to such and such, which includes these sections. And here's what staff already identified for you. And then we can obviously talk about anything within that section or any other meeting that you may come across and say, you know, we didn't talk about this and I think we should. So if that's good, that'll be the process. Counselor?
What's the scope of the work? Are there 150 ordinances?
Sorry,
to
we can't
review?
hear you.
I'm
The
sorry?
Scope
Can
of
you
the
get
work.
Closer to the microphone, please.
Oh, what's the scope, like, are there 150 ordinances that are going to come before us? I mean, just,
For revisions,
yeah,
I think we'll probably see about 30.
okay.
That's probably the high end. Yeah.
And at any point, council, don't let that limit you for any ordinances that you want to review.
Right.
If something is not on that list and we want to review that, bring it up. I got a whole list of regulations that need to be reviewed and axed. So,
Remember, he said council. Any council wants to.
Yeah.
So,
bring them up. Okay, is there anything else on that?
that is it.
And I'm sorry, the date to start?
We'll have this on each agenda moving forward, a small section, just so that we can do this. I'm not scheduling extra meetings for these.
Great.
We'll work them in much like what we're doing right now.
Perfect, okay. Okay, we're going to take a break. We'll take the next or the last item, which is our budget goals and CIP update, right before our last executive session. That way, you don't have to stay through the executive session unless you're part of that. Okay, so very good. I now declare us on break and out of workshop for the next 8 minutes.
Sue's gonna be on via Zoom.
Yeah, coming back from vacation.
Sue's gonna be on via Zoom.
Let's get settled, folks. Very good. Good evening. I'd like to call the City Council meeting, of January 4th, 2021 to order. And before you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, I just want to point out to everybody in the council chambers, city staff went ahead and ordered new, beautiful flags, American, state of Maine, and the new city flag, or new old city flag, and they just came out great. So I think, big thank you from us and the public to staff for taking that into consideration and making that happen. We really appreciate that. If you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, and also just for a little housekeeping before we get going into our agenda, councilors, if we can, just try to speak around 6 to 8 inches from the mic. We're going to be adjusting the sound for those of you who are watching at home and for all of us here so we can hear everything. So direction and distance are going to be the key for that. Thank you very much. There are no consent items on tonight's agenda. We do have the minutes of the December 21st, 2020 regular council meeting. Are there any corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion at this time to approve the minutes of the December 21, 2020 regular city council meeting.
Motion to accept.
Motion from Councilor Walker and a second from Councilor
Second.
Mills. All those in favor? Opposed? None being. Minutes are approved by a vote of 7-0.
Sounding good.
Next, we're going to move on to communications, presentations, and recognition. First, we have Ms. Rebecca Swanson-Conrad. Good to see you. She's going to be talking to us about the women's suffrage mural potential for the City of Auburn. So, Rebecca, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you. This is got a little echo. It's my first Zoom in. I'm so used to being here in person, but I'm appreciative that you offer this opportunity. I'm having an echo. Are you hearing okay?
You're coming in a little faint, but a little bit slightly echoing, but not bad. So if you just keep on
Okay.
your presentation, we'll let you know if you're coming in all garbled.
Okay, great. So I'm here to present an opportunity that has come our way because of the Maine Arts Commission grant for public art that we received and are working on, as you know, and thank you again for your support. I'll give a little bit of background, a process, and then this is really just an FYI for tonight. In 2017, Congress passed a bill to commemorate the women's suffrage movement and the 19th Amendment, and that trickled down from the National Endowment for the Arts to us, and I want to tell you how and why. 6 sites in the country are being selected to install murals to commemorate the 19th Amendment. The New England Foundation for the Arts asked New England states to apply, and the Maine Arts Commission applied and received the award for New England. So that will be one of 6. They in turn decided Boston Auburn should be the cities to be asked to host this permanent installation because of our work, because of our history, and because of our support of the arts and the work we're doing around economic development in the arts. So I'm really pleased, and this will get back up to the national level, so this is a big deal. I have met with the city staff and the small committee that we're using currently for the public art work, and everyone's given us the green light to go forward. It's a bit of a different process than if we were bringing a piece the city would be involved with, the way we've just done the other 2 pieces. In this case, the committee at the state level, because the Maine Arts Commission is the grantee. I've asked to be on that committee, and I now am, so there is local representation. The other 2 people are curators, the state level, and historians. So there are 4 people all total. There are very few restrictions other than it should be a permanent installation. They will put out the call for art, meaning the Arts Commission. And at first, they were really going to ask us for sites and then say, we'll bring you a piece of art. And I've navigated through that and really have brought us a little bit closer to the process, but we still won't be able to pick the final piece. We will, however, see the final suggestions by artists because we will have final control over the site. So that will bring us into the process. That deviates a little bit from the plan that you all approved and have been using. I want to make sure folks are clear on that. We are putting together a list of sites that they will then share with the artists. It will be a Maine artist. They want to use it as also a way to celebrate our bicentennial and the heritage of our state and the cultural expertise we have here. So this is something that we will be one of 6 sites in the country that will be have the focus at the national level to have a piece. And what I'm asking you tonight is to endorse the idea that we move forward. And then I want to share 5 ideas for sites. We're putting together a list for both Lewiston and Auburn. And as I said, we won't have the final say. The artist will make proposals, and then we'll have to fit the site with the piece. It's a mural, so it will be two-dimensional. The historians on the committee are doing a lot of work, and they are researching Lewiston Auburn's own history, and hopefully artists will have a lot to respond to about our own role in the women's suffrage movement. And there is one woman already that we know was quite active. It doesn't have to be a public site. I recommend it does. So for perpetuity, we have control over the piece. However, there are some private sites that are blank canvases in our community as well. The 5 sites that we've looked at in Auburn, and I have photos, but I think you know what they are, so I'll just say them, would be the wall in New Auburn on South Main Street, or between Auburn and New Auburn. It currently has the photographs that those could be installed and that wall could be used. The Auburn Hall parking garage, one of the sides. The side of Auburn Hall. Someone else mentioned, and I've driven and I can't quite, there's a retaining wall where Washington Street and Minot Ave intersect.
The Rotary.
I didn't go out today and refresh my memory on where that is, but I have a photo of it.
The
And
Rotary, Becky, the Rotary.
At the Rotary, okay. I must have to confess, I go too fast. I didn't see a retaining wall there.
Not the only one.
Just kidding. Just kidding. The photo looks beautiful, though. And then this is a private site, but it faces one of our public sites, and that would be the end of the Rogers Haircutters building, the 70s block on Main Street, where you have that beautiful blank wall. The only stipulations about sites that they want to be able to share with the artist is that it have high visibility, that makes sense, and that folks can visit it. So some places with adjacent parking or, a place that people can find easily. And that it will be something that we'll celebrate and people want to come and visit and have their photo taken in front of. So let me just reiterate why I'm here tonight. I want you to be informed, and I want to make sure that Auburn is comfortable moving forward with having artists consider sites in the city.
So unless I hear a very vocal objection about hosting a mural in a site yet to be determined, I think, are we good to go with this?
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. And it's kind of nice, too, because Sophie Carson from Edward Little was the main nominee. She won the 19th Amendment state art competition. She actually was invited to the White House several months ago, and she went representing the entire state. So it's kind of nice that, you know, she was from Edward Little, an Auburn resident. She won that piece of art in reference to the 19th Amendment, too. So very fitting. Becky, thank you so much for
Can I
that.
just, two things. One, congratulations. I know what a huge honor this is, and we're lucky to have it. And how do we advocate for Auburn?
Well, 5 sites, I mean, I'd like to talk, obviously, with the building owner on Festival Plaza, but I don't think we really can advocate. I think we want to, as a community, show that we really want this here. What I will tell you, though, is we are only one of the city in the cities in the state that has a public art policy at the level you folks have endorsed. And the turnover at the head of the Maine Arts Commission, but they've already reached out and said, I may be back asking you to help shepherd this idea across the state. So I think Auburn will be getting a lot of leadership opportunity to talk about public art going forward.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Okay, well, very good. Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to hearing some updates.
Great, thank you.
Very good. Have a great night. Next, we have council communication. I'll open this up. Anybody in the council have any council communication? Does anybody on the council have any communication for the city or the rest of the council? No? Councilor McLeod?
Just that the indoor farmers market is canceled until the spring.
Very good. Do you want to do the communication on the railroad?
I can.
Or you want me to?
Just to add to the farmer's market, those who had some of the farmer's market bucks that we had distributed, those will go away. Those won't be used any longer, but the program will still be there. So when it starts back up, then we'll be reissuing farmer's markets bucks, I think is what they were called. And so those would be available again. So you'll see more information on that as we get closer to the spring.
And I'd like to just, one communication briefly. We talked about the Lewis and Auburn Railroad opening for a site. After looking at the Lewis and Auburn Railroad Company's bylaws and charters, along with the other 2 existing directors from Auburn, which is Representative Bruce Bickford and former Mayor Jonathan Labonte, inside of their bylaws state that any openings can be filled by appointment of the directors until the term of expiration is finalized. They just sent communication to Phil and Sue today, and myself, nominating or appointing me as an interim director of the Auburn Railroad Corporation, the Lewis and Auburn Railroad Corporation, until April of 2021. That's when the council will appoint another 3-year term director at that point. So I'll keep you updated on that as we go forward. That's all the communication I have.
Lastly, Mr. Mayor, just we did, as a council, you did receive just a thank you note from the family of the Norm McKeon family. Norm had passed away. We did send a plant to the family, and so a nice little thank you note came available. I'll make sure I put that in your office.
Okay, we're going to move along to the first open session of the night. Members of the public are invited to speak to the council about any issue directly related to city business, which is not on this agenda. Members, if you'd like to speak and you're in the community room, please go up to the podium one at a time and speak. If you are joining this meeting via Zoom, please use the raise hand icon and we will call you in order. We do have a moderator monitoring this. If you do speak, I'd like to ask you to say your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone in the community room? I don't believe so. I'm going to check to see if there's anyone waiting in the Zoom.
There's no one there.
And there's no one there. I'll now close our first open session of the night. I'm going to move on to unfinished business, which there is none. So hence we move to new business. First item on new business tonight is Order 01-01042021, approving the PacGen TIF District number 26. This is a public hearing. So I'll entertain a motion at this time. At the public hearing, yeah.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion, I'm sorry, for Councilor Boss. Second from Councilor Walker. I'll open this up to the public hearing. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak on this proposed TIF project? No one in the community room? Oh,
Somebody's there.
do we have someone? Okay, nobody from the public that would like to speak? Okay, we're gonna bring this back to the council. Council?
Mr.
Councilor
Mayor,
McLeod.
I would like to make a motion to table this to the next meeting.
We've got a motion by Councilor McLeod to table this to the next meeting, which is January 19th, so a date certain.
Yes.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Second for Councilor Lasagna. Councilor Boss, excuse me, Councilor McLeod. Would you like to say anything about
It's the
that?
hair.
Yes, PacGen has been a longstanding successful business in Auburn. We look forward to continuing a strong relationship that benefits PacGen, the City of Auburn, and its taxpayers. As our projects move forward, we need to continue to be a good partner and assist in the growth and expansion of PacGen that they are planning. Tabling this would give them a little bit more time to work with city staff on how we can best meet those needs.
So we have a motion on the floor to table the order. And any other comment on the motion to table? None being, ask for a vote.
Point of order, does it need to be January 18th since we haven't moved the meeting back yet? Does that matter?
I can't
I
hear
can't, I'm sorry, I can't.
We haven't officially moved the meeting back to January 19th. Does it matter?
To our next, if I could, please update that to the next regularly scheduled city council meeting. Thank you. Is there any other comments on the table of the motion? If not, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor of the motion to table this to our next scheduled city council meeting, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Abstain? We'll table this to the next city council meeting by a vote of 6-0-1. Next is Order 02-01042021. To set the date for the second council meeting in January to be held on Tuesday, January 19th, 2021, which is the day after a Monday holiday, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which is where our regular council meeting would have fallen. Do I have a motion from a councilor?
So moved.
Got a motion from Councilor
Second.
Gary. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second from Councilor Milks. Open this up to the public. Is there any members of the public that would like to speak on this? None being? Bring it back to the council. Council?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to propose an amendment to this. It appears the order says they're meeting from January 25th to Tuesday, January 19th. Is that correct? Or should it be the 18th to the 19th? I'm not familiar with which.
No, it's the 18th to the 19th. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
then I'd
I'm
like to
not-
propose an amendment so it says January 18th, 2021 to Tuesday, January 19th, 2021.
I'm looking at a different file.
But please make sure that's the right date.
Oh, it is. It is January 18th to January 19th. So that must be a typo in the order. Councilor McLeod, just make a quick amendment to, or excuse me, motion to amend the dates to January 18th.
Yeah. The dates again?
Just from, in the order, just make a motion to amend the the initial council date to January 18th.
Yes. That is the motion I would like to make.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilor Boss. Basically, we're doing an amendment to the packet.
We don't need it.
If we could, the city clerk is on, and she'd like to comment regarding this.
Oh, please.
Sue, go ahead. If Liz, if you can bring Sue in.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so with the ordinance, the way it's currently stated, when a meeting falls on a holiday, we are scheduled to meet the following week, which would be the 25th. So what is on the order is correct.
Iverson?
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. Sorry, Sue. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
thinking the Monday versus the following Monday. Okay. Thank you for that clarifying. It's good to know that you're
You're
still
welcome.
around there. Okay, so we're going to scrap that. We're going to go back to the initial order then.
Mayor, would you lift your mic up just a hair?
Right there? Thank you. We'll go back to the initial order. So any other comments on this? We're just going to move it to the Tuesday after Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Fair enough. I'd like to ask for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Passes 7-0. Next is Order 03-01042021. This is authorizing staff to enter into an agreement with FB Environmental Associates for the evaluation of ordinances applicable to the protection of the Lake Auburn watershed. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Mr.
Second.
Mayor,
Yes.
may we please table this to the
Hold on,
next?
I'm sorry, I can't table anything till I have a motion on the floor.
Oh,
So,
sorry.
I have a motion for Councilor McLeod. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilor Boss. And at this time, with all due respect, we do have some guests from the firm. And they've taken some time, and I'd like to thank them for joining us today. And I'd like to have them speak and just tell us a little bit about themselves and the response to the proposal.
Sure. Thank you, everybody. My name is Forrest Bell. I'm the owner and CEO of FB Environmental Associates. We appreciate the opportunity to bid on this project. I've been doing public sector work and assessing natural resources in New England for about 30 years or so we're looking forward to this potential opportunity and happy to entertain any questions you may have about our proposal. As you can see, we did assemble an expert team that we feel addresses all the different components of the project, and I'm just going to have them quickly introduce themselves. Rich Brereton, who is the project manager working for FB Environmental, helping lead the project, and Adam Dagno from the University of Maine. So maybe Rich could go first, and then Adam.
Sure. A little bit about myself. My background is in water quality monitoring and watershed management. I did my graduate work at the University of New Hampshire. I'm actually a resident of Pownell, so about 15 miles from City Hall, and I would be in charge of an expert team, as Forrest mentioned, incorporating economics, planning, and of course the watershed science and research capabilities of our lead.
Hello everyone, my name is Adam Dagno. I'm an assistant professor of forest policy and economics at the University of Maine up here in Orono. My background is largely around natural resource economics and benefit cost analysis, focusing on sort of regulatory and policy analysis associated with finding efficient solutions to environmental issues. I largely have worked sort of across the gamut with everything from NGOs to sort of local and federal level government on issues related to water quality, invasive species management, and sort of economically efficient ways to allocate resources. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks. I'll just add that we work generally where science meets civics. It seems like the perfect type of project looking at this. Our main goal is to provide neutral, non-biased science and economic analysis to help inform this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, folks. And I will say, it was a pleasure to read your proposal. So a lot of time went into that, and thank you very much. I'd like to open this up at this point to the council. Council, do we have any comments? Councilor, we'll go to Councilor Zania, then move to Councilor Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two questions. One that doesn't have to do specifically with this organization. Thank you for the presentation that we only received one application, which is concerning to me, not because of what you submitted, but just to be going with just one application for an RFP. The second thing is also information that came from Mr. Jason Polina, who is one of the trustees, saying that in his opinion, a portion of the response submitted does not demonstrate full understanding of one of the key issues the RFP is seeking to have researched. Specifically, in response to Section C, economic impacts, the consultant repeatedly references, quote, cost of added protection. The objective specifically asks about the impacts of resource protection, interventions on tax revenues, economic activity, and ratepayers, not about any added protection. So I have a question about that.
Absolutely. I think there's, and I'd like to turn this over to Councilor Carey, Councilor Gary, who are on the committee to help review the RFP. Do you have any recommendations or thoughts on this at this point? Do we want to? I can't hear you. Oh, I'm sorry, you couldn't hear me? Okay, do you have any thoughts on this in general, the RFP or the response on whether or not we should accept this at this time? Or do we want to, and I'll tell you right now, I agree with all the comments. I loved reading the proposal. My history with businesses responding to RFPs and issuing RFPs, usually if you have one respondent to that RFP, you need to take a little bit more time and make sure clarity is there and either open up or not open up. And that, I think, is up to staff to do and their expertise. But I would recommend at this time that we at least table this to our next regular scheduled meeting to give staff, if this is appropriate, a couple weeks to talk with the respondent, decide if they wanted to open it up again, leave it up to them, but more so to grab clarity and also give us some time post-holiday for a reference check. And so at that point, that's just a recommendation. Councilor Carrier?
Well, and that was going to be my move, is to table to the time specific, the next meeting, to give us time to go over this more in depth and allow the city staff to make any changes that they need to. That was part of the original outlook in our study, is when we would have time to be able to go back, look at what was presented to us, make changes as we needed to for what we were looking for. Can you hear me?
Yeah, right there. You're good.
And then come back and make a decision about it. And I don't think that with just a couple of days that we've had enough time for either us to look at it or for us to be able to make staff make those recommendations. So
we have a motion to table to a date of January 19th. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a second from Councilor Gary. So on the table of the motion, I'd like to turn it over to the city manager. Phil, how do you feel about another 2 weeks in order to work on?
Sure. I think it would be helpful for council to still provide any feedback that you have as you go through. I understand it was a holiday weekend that you had to look over the RFP. I have had a conversation with Forrest, who's with us, who's on the Zoom call. We were able to talk about some of the concerns. I did provide him Jason Paulina's email that he had provided us regarding a concern that he had. Forrest was very quick, responded back, and really referenced back what was in our RFP based off from their response and why they would be responding that way. It's because what we had listed in our RFP. I feel very comfortable going back. We still have some time within our timeline to be able to go back and maybe review this with the consultant team and make any adjustments that we might bring back before you for a final review on the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to clarify, Councilor Carrier, were you saying making changes in the actual RFP itself?
No, just in what we were looking for. We knew that we would put out and people would answer us with what their specifics were, and we need to make sure that we're tailoring that to what we're looking for, just to make sure that that's all in there the correct way.
Okay, just because it's not.
Well, just so we know, this is just a motion to table this. It's still up to the responsibility of staff to work through whatever they decide to do on process, okay, with the consultation of the subcommittee from both Water and the City Council that helped craft the RFP. We'll leave that up to them, and then we'll have this back on our agenda if you vote for this tabling motion on January 19th.
But again, you're not saying to change.
We're just talking about the motion to table.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the only motion. Everything else is just a motion to table versus a motion to amend or change process. So the process that has been in place still will be in place. Any other questions? Councilor Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're not looking to change it drastically. We just want to make sure what the group came up with for what we're definitely looking for is the right fit into what they wrote. I mean, we all interpret things different. And so we just want to give all of us time and staff to go through what the committee came up with and what this group kindly came up with to make sure that they're going to get the exact answers that we're looking for to help us make the best judgments of what we can and can't do around and in the lake.
So I appreciate that, but I want to be very clear on that. So you may be changing some language in the RFP in response to the applicant?
Just to be clear, all we're saying is this is tabled. So the process that the city manager and staff has followed will still be followed, It'll give all of us more time to review this, because it was hard to check references over the holidays. It's hard to look and understand the nuances between an RFP and its response. And yes, if the manager, and it's up to the manager and staff, if they want to talk to the respondents and make sure that the proposal is tweaked or more in tune with the language in the RFP, that's up to them. This will be, again, on our agenda with either a revised response or a non-revised response on January 19th, according to the motion to table.
Just a point of clarification. So in the agenda packet, it shows that on December 29th, staff met to review the proposal. At what level of review took place? Did they do that work to compare the RFP to what was submitted to ensure that there was alignment? Or did they just do a cursory review?
So staff did meet prior to the posting of this agenda. I believe it was the day before the posting, so it must have been last Tuesday probably, and did review what the expectations were in the RFP and compared it with the presentations that were done. We also did look at previous reports that the team has done to ensure that their work product would meet our expectations. So staff recommendation was to go ahead and move forward. We felt that they met all the thresholds and all the deliverables that we were looking to accomplish within the timeline that we also set.
Thank you.
If there's no other comments, I'd like to ask for a vote at this time, or call the vote on a motion to table till January 19th. All those in favor? Opposed? None being. We will table this vote, this order, till January 19th. Just to take a moment, Mr. Bell and gentlemen, very much for joining. Just, I'm sure, based upon your response, you deal with municipalities all the time. So this is going to give us a little bit of a 2-week window to evaluate your response. And obviously, Phil will continue to be in contact with you as long as this point of contact. But thank you very much, and we will see this on the agenda on January 19th.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. Okay. I'm going to open this up to the last open session of the night. Members of the public are invited to speak to any issue that is not on tonight's agenda, but is directly related to city business. Is there anybody in the community room or online at this time? Nobody in the community room online? I got nobody online. I'll now close our second open session. Next, we have reports. Mayor's report. It's the holidays. I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday season. New Year's Eve was not the same without wonderful New Year's Auburn, and it was probably the best weather New Year's Eve will have in the next decade. So we're just crossing our fingers for next year. The State of the City address will be held on January 19th. For those that have been here multiple terms, the last one I gave, I do it every other year. It was January of 2019. So I'll be giving that again. It'll be pre-recorded. So I don't have to give a 10-minute policy speech wearing a mask, but that will be aired during the report segment of our city council meeting. And that's that for reports on my end. I'm going to start off over to the right. Councilor Carrier, reports. Walker?
I'd like to just report that we had a great holiday meal that we put on. I mean, the age-friendly committee volunteered and put it on, and we did 820 finger rolls. What that amounted to was 265 people that came to Pettingill Park and picked up their meal to take home. And overall, that did not cost the city very much money at all to speak of. We had a volunteer that donated some money, and people that picked up their sandwiches, their water, chips, and Bismarck for that meal. A lot of people donated $5, $4, $2, a few $20 bills involved. And overall, I think you'll find that the meal itself paid for itself with all the kind people that we have. And we got quite a few response back from people calling the Recreation Department and saying how great they think everyone that's doing these things with us, working with us, have been to anyone that may drive up and get their meal, and may call in and ask to be put on a list. They've been handled personally with kid gloves so that we're not insulting anybody. We're not making people feel like they have to be poor people to show up or rich people to show up. They just feel great about how they're treated. And the staff that's down there has done a great job working with the age-friendly committee. They take all the phone calls and they put them in alphabetical order. They tell us who it is, how many there is, and we try our darndest to keep that all in order and have it out there. And again, we had a three-hour block, and in less than an hour and a half, everybody was fed to take it home. And I stayed there until 3:10. We had 3 packages ready for somebody. They didn't show up. 3 o'clock was the deadline. One lady came in saying that she was supposed to pick up 4 packages, and luckily I had them 3 sitting there that someone didn't come and get because I did not have her name listed in the list of names. So we were able to give her everything so her family could have their lunch, wished her a Happy New Year, and everybody was happy that day that we took care of. And of course, we're going to do a spaghetti dinner, and that's going to be February 14th. And they'll have the same choices. They'll call in, they'll order their dinner, they'll come pick it up at the time that we put on the flyers and whatever. But so far, I believe the age-friendly group itself has fed already over 1,600 people from the senior center at Pettingill Park, and this is all volunteers. There's no cost to it. It's the committee. We want to do it, and we've had fun doing it, and working with the Recreation Department has been a pleasure for us to be able to pull all this off.
Outstanding. Councilor Milks?
Nothing today.
Councilor Gary?
The good Counselor Walker said it all. I was going to talk about the senior stuff, and kudos to the staff.
Very good. Councilor McLeod?
Nothing.
Councilor Zani?
Nothing.
Councilor Boss?
I wanted to give an update on the Auburn Public Library. Board of Trustees, our next meeting is January 19th, and the public library has been doing a lot of really great online programming. They have yoga, meditation, nutrition education. They're also doing a phenomenal job with curbside pickup. You make a phone call, you can either request a specific book or resource, or say, I have a 6-year-old who's interested in Egypt, and they'll give you a stack of books that are age appropriate and really wonderful. So they've been a great resource for, I know, at least for our family, and I know a lot of other families in the community, so I wanted to give them some kudos. For Ag Committee, our next meeting is January 26th. We just met last week, hosted Senator Ned Claxton. It was a great conversation. We're also going to be looking to connect more with staff to see what strategies staff may have for growing our ag and forestry economy in the new year, with our new staff that we have on board, what opportunities exist now that we have a fully grouped ag committee, and we're really pushing forward with some strategies. I've connected with City Manager Kroll, and I'll be presenting with the ag committee to this body on February 1st to give an update, some progress report on the order from the City Council to the Ag Committee. So look forward to that. And then just quickly, the Comprehensive Plan Review Team, we're breaking out into 3 working groups. Some of those working groups, or actually all 3 of those working groups, are now meeting this week for the first time. So we're seeing some good movement on those strategies as well. Thank you.
One thing I did forget, and I apologize, but PAL Christmas recap. And I'm not sure how many people even on this council knew about what's going on with the PAL Christmas efforts. I didn't know about it until I walked in the PAL Center and I saw it entirely, walked in the Auburn Community Senior Center and it was entirely filled with toys. I just want to recap a little bit. This is all done through volunteer efforts, and I have to give an amazing hands-off to staff, especially Sean Boyd with the Auburn PAL Center. They collected enough gifts for 175 kids in Auburn. These all came from contributions. I'll mention just a few of them. From the YMCA for gift cards, Toys for Tots, in the U.S. Marine Corps were suppliers of a large amount of toys. The Auburn Exchange Club, the Maine Masonic community specifically are 4 large lodges, along with the adjoining Eastern Star organizations over on Turner Street in Auburn. They actually did over 34 handmade cradles with porcelain dolls, heirloom quality. Craft. It was unbelievable. Danville Grange, folks from individuals. I don't want to name individuals because sometimes they don't want that recognition. One individual donated 26 ham Christmas meals from Gippers that were delivered on Christmas Day for families. It was an amazing effort. I don't think I could do it justice, talking about what this probably meant to those families and what it meant to staff who were busy wrapping. And hats off to, some of these guys and girls, especially Jeremy, who I didn't think could, wrap anything. He's a wrapping expert. He's gotten much better after this Christmas. So it was a lot of work over weeks of time, and through snowstorms, they persevered. So this is some of the little stuff that I don't even think this council knows about. I want to make sure everybody in Auburn does know about this, because this is what builds great community. So Sean, hats off to you. Staff, hats off. Mr. Manager, Assistant Manager, for making sure this all happened. But more importantly, for these Auburn-based businesses and individuals to come forth in that holiday spirit and provide for those less fortunate, it should be an inspiration to us all. So thank you for letting me share that. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for bringing that up regarding the team and the work that they did, and especially Sean Boyd and Liz Allen also made it available for individuals who wanted to give via Amazon wish list. So they were able to go on through Amazon and made a lot of contributions that way as well. So it was a great team effort by everybody. And we'll continue to do more, just like Council Walker was talking regarding the senior outreach and the food program that took place as well for our holiday gatherings. Those are all important, and staff is ready to do what we need to do to come alongside our strong volunteer group. Without the volunteer group, we couldn't make it happen. So thank you very much. Just as far as an update for the city, obviously coming back after some holiday time away, we are still working through staffing challenges. Quarantines that hasn't gone away. We still have staff that are quarantined either by exposure or travel or whatever it might be, which then also has an impact if they've had exposure with other staff. We are working through that. We will continue to work with the department directors and continue trying to ensure that we have appropriate staffing at all levels of the department. So that is an ongoing challenge for us, but we'll continue, because any time we have 20 or so staff members that are out as a result of quarantining. So that has not changed for us, so that still continues. But all departments are able to still operate efficiently, and we're meeting all the needs of the community at this time. That's it.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, that is it for reports. I'm going to now pick up on the very last.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to say a little bit about the PAL and the people, like both of you have said. There are many, many, many volunteers, and they're there day in and day out. It's not a 5-minute job. They leave their families, they come there, they work with the rec department, they work with the PAL, they work with us. There are so many kind-hearted people out there, it almost makes you cry when you see the hours that they put into this stuff, and they make it happen. And the food that people are given to give away to other people and make that work so that anyone that's hungry can find food if they want to just make that phone call to the Recreation Department or to City Hall. There's food available. They just all work so hard to make sure that we got what we need in this city to help out people. And again, you just have to be in a little bit of a bad spot to be able to reach out to us, because I know you're not going to do it if you got everything you need. So if you don't have something, folks out there, don't be afraid to reach out to the City of Auburn. We will help you one way or the other, or we'll find you some sponsors that will help you. So
No,
That's-
thank you very
that's
much
all
for
I
that. And we're going to move on to that last workshop item at this point before we go into our last topic, which will be an executive session. So I'm going to turn it over in just a moment to Jill Eastman and Phil Kroll to talk about our fiscal year 22 budget goals and fiscal year 21 CIP update. After I tell you all that the garbage recycling calendar that's magnetic is available at Auburn Hall for you to pick up. Thank you, Liz, for reminding me.
All right, thank you, Mayor, Council. So we are in budget season. That has kicked off for staff. They've been in that budget process for the last month. All budgets have been submitted now to Jill Eastman, our finance director. We are beginning budget deliberations with department directors starting tomorrow. That'll be our first session. What I'm really looking forward to tonight is to just have a conversation regarding budget expectations. That'll be helpful for us as we go in and meet with the departments. Just a couple points that I'd like to share with you. One, obviously we're going to do our best to try to strike a balance. That balance is always a challenge. We need to look at how are we meeting the needs to deliver services that we have already aligned as a community, but also how do we minimize the impact on taxpayers so that, as we talked about earlier, how do we make sure that we're focused on that mill rate and keeping that mill rate down and competitive with other communities? And then also positioning Auburn for growth. Sometimes if we want to see growth, we have to make investments in certain areas. So striking that balance means that we might bring a budget together before you that may look a little different than it has in the past, because we are looking to align where we need to align to ensure that we are meeting some of your expectations that you've already provided to us or was as a result of the strategic planning process or the comp plan implementation that we're working towards. But we also have drivers within our budget, and those drivers don't go away. Municipalities, almost 90%, 90+% of what we, who we are is staff. So they're the ones that are out doing that work day in, day out, making sure streets are plowed, neighborhoods are safe, fires are put out. So those are key components. So salary and benefits is always a driver for us. Collective bargaining agreements, you all have been part of the many of the collective bargaining agreements we now have in place. Things that you voted on in those collective bargaining agreements come due. And so some of those are coming due. We have, if you recall, we've been really averaging at that 2% COLA within those agreements. On top of some have steps based on their collective bargaining agreement or have merit steps, merit pay. So those are all being calculated and they'll be part of the presentation. But know that there is, there is an expectation that we hit those. And so those will be coming before you. Debt service is another component that we will be looking at. That's obviously going to increase. If you think about what we are looking at from last year, we increased what we normally would do for bonding. So that is going to have an impact on our debt service this year. So, and then we always have to anticipate what that future debt service will be, especially as we move into having a new high school. So those are things that we'll continue bringing before you, having conversations about as we move forward. We also have some positives within this budget session. I don't want to just give you negatives. So positives would be that, one, our health insurance remained the same. So our premium had no increase. We had actually budgeted for a 9% increase in our health insurance. Health insurance is actually a very large line item for us as a community, as a city. So having no increase for that health insurance is going to be very beneficial as we put the budget together. Also, our county budget work that was done by the county budget committee and then the commissioners really are bringing us at about a 0% change, a $0 change rather, on the county budget. So some of those numbers are fluctuating. I'm waiting to get the final number from them, but once we have that, that'll be part of the budget presentation. But that is looking good. If you remember last year, it was about a $147,000 increase in the county budget. So to be coming in this year at next to $0 increase is going to be a great savings for us as a city. And then unfortunately we do have unknowns. So some of our unknowns still remain is the state revenue sharing. If you recall, last year, city finance director was very conservative in what we were increasing as far as revenue. Because the state had changed the formula of what we received for state revenue share, we did not put that full amount in for budget revenue expectations, which was actually going very conservative, is benefiting us as a community. There are many communities that are struggling right now with state revenue share. I'm pleased to say that we are now nearly halfway through this year, and we have not had any revenue shortfalls for state revenue sharing. So that continues to put us in a very good place. COVID impacts are still unknown. We are still struggling through trying to anticipate what's next. What will we be faced with? We are still gathering numbers and to provide you a good report. The challenge with this is we had funding that came in from many different buckets, but there was also expenses that weren't covered under COVID. We're still working through with FEMA. FEMA is really our next round of looking to recover some of those dollars. Much like right now, if we have several firefighters out, firefighters do fall in that category for reimbursement from FEMA. So we'll be putting together our request to FEMA and hopefully receive some revenue back from that. The third category regarding unknowns is related to some of what we do is directly related to services that we provide at a cost, at a fee. Like Norway Savings Bank, like Ingersoll, and other rec programming. Those all took a hit. Those will be some large revenue deficits that will be coming in with this year. Currently, we already know that our Thunder team that we have there, they have decided to move the league that has that hockey, the hockey league rather, has moved much like what NHL and other teams have done. They're now in a bubble. That bubble is in Florida. They're not here. So those games will not be played here. Those other teams that normally come to the community will not be playing here for the rest of their season. So that has an impact on us because a lot of times there's other services that are provided when they're in the community. Even when the team comes in, sometimes it's housing, lodging rather. Sometimes it's our restaurants. But then also it does have an impact on services that are provided at Norway, like ice skate sharpening for our pro shop that we have there, and we have yet to be able to open up the concession stand there since we've closed back in last March. So those are all unknowns that we're working through, trying to project, trying to determine what high school sports are going to be looking like this winter. How much longer are those going to be postponed? Will they be coming back online? Because that has impact, especially as far as when we talk about Ingersoll. Ingersoll, as you know, has always been a healthy program. Their budget's always been healthy. However, now that's no longer the case this year, and that's directly related to COVID. So as I look at FY21, I'm really looking at it as a maintenance budget. Trying to make sure that we're maintaining what we currently have, what we're currently doing. We will maintain, at least starting off, we will maintain the reductions that we had done initially with staffing for last year's budget. So if you recall, that was 2 firefighters, 2 police officers, and 2 public works employees that we froze those positions. I've instructed the directors to not bring those back into their budgets. We will not present them back before you this year. We'll keep those as frozen positions. And then we're also we'll work through with the departments, but for the most part, other than anything that is critical, we're not moving forward with any new positions in this upcoming budget because we really are looking at this as a maintenance budget. Last year, the budget increased for municipal side was 2.35%. The CPIU was 2.3% last year. We should know next month what the CPIU will be for moving forward. And we'll do our best to present a budget that I believe can still provide the services that we're providing, deliver what the expectations are of the community, but also your expectations. So that's really the budget goals that I have anyway moving forward, but it would be helpful to hear from you if there's anything that you feel that I shared we should be looking at differently, or what else you would like to see as we move into the budget schedule. You also have that budget schedule that I provided you. It is pretty aggressive, but I think we're going to be able to do the work that we need to do without taking up nearly 3 months of your time just focusing on budget workshops. I'm not looking to do that. We're going to do it within a month. Jill's going to be right beside me. She already said she agrees with the schedule. So it is aggressive for her because we want to make sure, part of the way that we're able to do this is we are moving this to being able to have the budget within Munis. By doing that, we can make some on-the-spot changes as we move forward as well. So that'll help us as you're working through amendments and you're working on changes. We'll be able to do those right then. You'll be able to see them and be able to access that information on a regular basis. So, but I'll certainly entertain any comments or questions. Councilor Lozano.
So is Ingersoll has no activity, none?
Ingersoll does, I can confirm it, but I think right now it has 0 activity.
Only because I know that there are other indoor spaces in southern Maine that have activities that are COVID compliant with the state. So I don't know if that's something, and that they're overbooked.
So, yeah, so we are still a yellow county.
Yeah.
And so we are still not, those teams aren't allowed to play. All of our teams are all school teams.
Okay,
And those
thank
school teams aren't gathering.
It was interesting when Androscoggin was yellow, but Cumberland was green. They would come and rent ice time and indoor time, and they travel to Androscoggin County, but now they're both yellow, which make absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. Now they're both yellow, they can't travel out. So,
We might have some rentals, but we're not renting at what we would normally be renting.
any other budgetary questions, goals? I mean, really for Phil, it's, this is a time for us to kind of debate what some of our goals are. Earlier on, you said keep the mill rate flat, if not decrease. Any thoughts on that? Any ideas? We'll say
I
the
think in the
best-
back of our mind, we want to stay flat.
I'm sorry, say that again, Counselor?
I think in the back of our mind, we all want to stay pretty much flat there because at this point, we don't know what's going to happen in the next 12 months. So, I don't think we're all looking for an increase.
Counselor? Anybody else? Yeah, I will say, listen, I mean, this is tough. You look at any company, any organization that looks at budgeting, and on MVA staff at this point, we do have to support this. To get the message is to try to keep that mill rate, what the actual ratepayers pay out of their pocket, as flat as possible, then that's a victory in these lean times, or these uncertain times, I should say. I'm sorry, Counselor. Take it a step further, it's imperative for us to understand how new valuation gets counted and where it gets counted and when. We don't start adding anything to our valuation and collecting taxes for it unless it's occupied before April 1, correct? Jill? The April 1 date?
Not necessarily occupied, it's whatever the value is as of
April-
April 1st.
April, the value, okay, so the finished, if you would, the finished product. But if it's still under construction, there is no value associated with that
Well,
pre-construction.
there's some
value.
value. They add some value if there's some construction, but that it's not the full value until it's totally complete.
They have a foundation. By April 1st, we will go ahead and assess the value for that foundation. So we will have some tax.
A partial tax versus a full
Right.
complete tax.
Right.
Okay. So it's imperative that, if we're in maintenance this year, if we start thinking about fiscal year 22 and how we prepare for that, and that tax rate. So, Phil, schedule, do you want to go over that?
So hearing no more conversation, we're going to shift to capital CIP update for what we currently have approved. So this is FY 21's capital improvement projects. I told you I would provide you back an update on these. I'll go through some of these pretty quick for you, but if you look at the sheet, those that are highlighted in yellow, those are projects that have not moved forward at this point. All the other projects that you approved are all underway or completed. or anticipated to be completed.
Have not moved forward?
The yellow has not moved forward
Thank you.
to any real extent, I should say that. So starting off with the clerk's office, the record restoration, that has been submitted. We're waiting for a return. When we get the return on those records, we'll also be invoiced at that time. Under facilities, the Boys and Girls Club roof has been completed. You see we do have a balance. That was a CDBG project. The public safety facility study is about 95% complete. The assessing of the electrical vehicle has been purchased. The Festival Plaza fountain system and the removal. We do have a plan that we have that we'll be able to demonstrate to you, moving the fountains out, shifting the stage over to where it should be, which is up closer to the building. The way the sound bounces off the buildings doesn't really work well when we have a gathering there. By shifting that stage, it'll be able to come right out to the street. If you were at the New Year's Auburn, if we put the stage back in there, you'll be able to actually have that right out into the street. So on some of our other projects that we have there. So that is, we're looking at that, but then we're also looking at doing an assessment of what needs to be upgraded for Festival Plaza. That has been there for a while. Some of the surface needs to be repaired, replaced. So that'll be coming back before you. We'll be using those funds to provide that information. The 911 study that was allocated in here, that's been tabled at this point. We're not moving forward with that. The security access control, this is regarding facilities, so that in the past, you could just walk into Central Fire Station if you knew what door to open. Those have all now been secured. It has pass keys to those. Those pass keys are the same ones to get into any one of our other buildings. And so getting those on alignment is a good security measure. We have some other security upgrades that are happening in Auburn Hall. This is any active threat that might be within the facility. We're preparing to ensure that staff remain safe during that time and other doors can remain locked, but still have good public access. The fire engine replacement under fire, the expected delivery on that is March. The exhaust management system, they're just waiting for the installation. The equipment's delivered. Ambulance replacement, the purchase agreement signed. That'll be delivered May 21. The cardiac monitor is in place, purchased and in use at this time. Extrication equipment, the PO has been issued. We expect delivery sometime this month. And then the fire hose replacement is currently out to bid. Dangerous building and demolitions under planning and economic development. We currently have 2 pending lawsuits regarding properties that we're looking at. So some of those funds will be used for those. As you can see, one of the approximate costs is $200,000. You did not budget $331,000. That's just what's in that fund. So sometimes there's carryover money, but I want Jill and I want to make sure that you could see all the money that was available in that account. So that's what that available account is. The comprehensive plan property acquisition. We have money obligated for the Lake Auburn study, ball fields and Mount Appetite. And then some of those funds will be allocated as part of the new Auburn development that's been taking place there. The downtown vision, I have that highlighted in yellow. We have been having discussions, so those conversations have been happening with developers as we continue to move forward. We've given you some updates talking about, what areas can we be considered in that. So that is happening, but nothing has been spent out of that account at this time. The New Auburn Village Center revitalization, again, this is a TIF and also the Northern Borders grant. That's all just timing. That'll continue moving forward. The downtown parking and walkability, we provided you a report on that. There's a state match for the Court Street improvements, so that has happened and moving forward. The Maine Avenue South Gulf Street redevelopment, there's no movement on that. That's been tabled at this point. It's really going to be as we, and we'll work with economic development on this, as we get closer to really talking to the developer there, that's when that would resurface and we need to take a look at that. Council Walker?
While you're on the Minot Avenue, is that part of the walkway that's gonna go in and stuff? Is that what that means?
No, this is this has been that road, South Gulf Street, and behind the old PD, and how that ties into Minot Avenue. So that's the roadway that goes in there. It would tie in at the intersection of Elm Street.
Where on here does it show the new walk that they're working on right now? Because they've cut that bank in, the trees, they've cut everything.
That's a state project. That's a state project.
Okay.
Councilor Walker was talking about the work that's happening on Minot Avenue currently, so. And that's just improvements to the embankment wall, retaining wall that they did a few years ago. They're now extending that up, but also cutting some of those trees so that we get a little bit more sunlight on the road where it normally, that ices over pretty frequently right there. That won't be, we won't have that icing over issue. All right, under police, the vehicle purchase for their replacements. They're waiting for the vehicles to be outfitted, should be done by the end of February. The motorcycle purchase, if you remember, this was a lease project that's now no longer available. The lease program is no longer available through Harley Davidson, so this is the purchase of one of those. Just waiting for the final paperwork on that. And then the cruiser camera system, if you remember, we did get that presentation from the chief back when we were talking about body cameras. The cruiser camera is part of that entire program, so the cruiser cameras are completed and in service at this time. The parking enforcement software has been tabled at this point. We're not, I'll work with the chief a little bit more on that, but we want to make sure whatever we get is something that we're going to want to be using moving forward and ties into any kiosk-type parking systems that we might be introducing for certain parking lots. Council Walker, I think, was on that committee when we had talked about that before, about those parking kiosks. It's basically the pay and display units that you see in other communities. We want to make sure this software ties into them. Under Public Works, basically every program under Public Works is underway. It's either out to bid, or it's projected to go out to bid, or it's already been purchased, and you have all those totals. Under Recreation and Norway Savings Bank Arena, they also have been moving forward with all of their projects. There's still some work that needs to be done, but you'll see the only thing left is the programming and facility study. This was money that was allocated regarding Ingersoll. So that money, Ingersoll, and also a larger, if we were to look at doing something differently with another turf facility. And so this was part of that study to do that. It's not that we're not going to move forward with this. We've just been working on all these other projects. We'll move this in to discussion before the end of the year. We'll move into that. But nothing's been done with that at this point. I hope that gives you a good idea of all the programs, projects that are underway, where we are with them. It gives you a total, so you know what's taking place with them. Some of these, if you go through, you might look and say, this was not on the FY21 CIP item. That's because it was a carryover from a previous year. That would be Tot Lot, the portable stage, and the passenger van. It was just done this year, but it was a previous year that had been carried over. So there's like 3 or 4 under rec that were carryovers. Jill worked with the director there to say, we need to move these projects along. So those projects got completed. So, any questions regarding CIP update? All right, that's it.
Very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And you know what? Just getting all this stuff cleaned up is great. And I do appreciate being able to see what the balances are left over, the remainders. I think that's important because all that will carry over to the fund balance for next year's CIP. So.
And we also include in there what fund they came out of, just so you know, because if there is a balance, but it was a CDBG, that just doesn't come back in. That goes back into CDBG funding. So,
Jill, do you have anything to add? No?
Councilor Gary.
I've got thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Manager. I've got a question. Back in July, when we decided we couldn't have the 4th of July fireworks, we allocated the money towards a project for the cemetery to get a monument and to maybe upgrade the pond. Has there been any movement, or where does that sit?
I'll have to check. I'll have to follow up on it. I know staff has that on their list, I'm just not sure where it is. But it's a great question.
And,
We can
yeah.
go back and look at it.
And that was revenue that was non-CIP. If I remember correctly, we voted on this before. It was actually operational dollars, if I
The
remember
money that we
correctly.
had set aside for fireworks, we redirected it for this project.
Right, that was operational budget versus CIP.
Right, but I just
Yes,
wanted to
it's
get
under
that.
community programs in the Parks and Rec budget, or the recreation budget.
So we'll follow up on that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. That gets us back on schedule for the agenda. We only have one more thing left, which is an updated labor contract negotiations. And this is to enter into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA, Section 405, 6A. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Counselor Boss, second from Counselor Walker. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed, none being. We now sit in executive session. There will be no action following executive session, so we're going to end the live transmission for the evening tonight. Thank you.